Today I'd like to present making biofuel from renewable energy sources. What is biofuel? Biofuel is a fuel source made from renewable energy. It's used in many different types of engines, like gasoline and diesel engines, and it is a much healthier alternative to the environment compared to fossil fuels. Unlike fossil fuels, biofuel is a renewable energy source, and it does not emit as much greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. Global warming inspired me to experiment with other alternatives to fossil fuels, including biofuel. What is renewable energy? Renewable energy are natural resources like solar, water, and plants. I used plants in this project to make vegetable oil, which I then used in the biofuel making process. I used water in my project to help the plants grow, but it can also be used for hydroelectricity, which is generating power from water. I also used solar power in my project to help the plants grow and to power a small solar panel, which I then connected to UV lights to help the plants grow when there was no sun. It does take 3 to 4 months for sunflowers to grow to an adult size and to grow seeds. I bought 100% sunflower oil from my local store. The first engine I used to test the biofuel I had made was the kerosene engine, also called a Stirling engine. The kerosene engine uses heat to run. I placed the biofuel in this small container and I lit it. The fire then heats up a small bulb with a piston inside it. The piston circulates the hot and cold air, and it is connected to a small wheel, which as the piston is moving, the wheel turns repeatedly. The next step was to add ether and castor oil to the biofuel. This then turned it into biodiesel, which I then tested in the remote-controlled diesel engine. Today we're going to be turning this into this. To make biofuel, you need these 3 ingredients: methyl hydrate or methanol, sunflower oil, and sodium hydroxide, also called lye. Measure 4 grams of lye. Next, measure 50 milliliters of methanol. Measure out 200 milliliters of sunflower oil. Next, we heat up the sunflower oil to speed up the chemical reaction. While we're waiting for the sunflower oil to heat up, we mix the methanol and lye. The boiling point of methanol is 148 degrees Fahrenheit, so we keep the oil below that to prevent a violent reaction when mixing it. Now we mix the warm sunflower oil and the methanol lye solution. Mix vigorously for 20 minutes. I poured the mixture into a glass container and let it settle overnight. The mixture separates into glycerin and kerosene. The kerosene floats to the top and the glycerin settles at the bottom. I tested the biokerosene by extracting it from the container with a syringe and putting it in a small lamp. I lit the biokerosene in the lamp and placed it in the Stirling engine. It takes a minute for the air in the engine to warm up. The engine will run continuously when the bulb is hot enough with a little kickstart. The last experiment in my project was to make biodiesel using the kerosene I extracted from the sunflower oil. First, I separated the kerosene from the glycerin using a strainer. Next, I extracted ether from starter fluid by spraying it into a measuring cup. Ether helps the engine start when it is cold. The ether is added to the kerosene. The last component is castor oil, which helps lubricate the engine while it is running.
I used a ratio of 1/3 kerosene, 1/3 ether, and 1/3 oil. The amounts of ether and oil are a bit high, but the ether will help the engine start in cold weather and the oil will protect the engine. The oil was added to the kerosene-ether mixture, and everything was mixed thoroughly. I strained the mixture one last time to make sure there were no solids or leftover glycerin. We now have homemade biodiesel ready to test. To test the biodiesel, I got an old radio-controlled diesel plane engine off of eBay. Here I am filling up the fuel tank with the biodiesel.
Now I'm going to explain the different parts of my diesel engine test setup. These are the three major parts of my test setup: the diesel engine, the gas tank, and the throttle. The diesel engine is made up of the fuel line, the carburetor, the combustion chamber, and the muffler. And we also added a propeller to act as a load.
The throttle is connected to the carburetor through a cable. Moving the cable controls how much air is mixed with the diesel in the engine's combustion chamber. To start the engine, I first open the throttle and plug the carburetor. This forces fuel into the engine. This is called priming the engine. The step is to kickstart the engine by spinning the propeller as fast as possible. This causes the fuel in the engine cylinder to be compressed, which causes ignition.
A few moments later.
It can take a few tries to get the engine warm enough for the fuel to combust reliably. This engine is now running on sunflowers.
In conclusion, biofuel is a much healthier alternative to the environment compared to fossil fuels, but it does take a very long time to make, as growing sunflowers take a very long time. Therefore, biofuel would never be able to fully replace fossil fuels, but they may be able to offset the use of them. I did my project at home because I wanted to make the process as easy as I could and only using household chemicals. I enjoyed the hands-on portion of my project, like growing sunflowers and mixing chemicals to make the biofuel. And I believe the next steps would be to bring it to a wider scale, like making more batches of biofuel and testing them in larger engines.